for Mom Talk. And joining me this morning, parenting author Kenny Bodanis, as well as parenting blogger Andrea Howick. And we're talking about what happened earlier this week, the government announcing sex education, just like math, science, and French, will be mandatory in kindergarten all the way through to high school. So your thoughts, pros and cons, and do you think this is something good for your children, Andrea?
Well, I mean, I think with a lot of things, people are questioning the execution, how it's going to actually work once it gets into the schools. And I mean, clearly this is a pilot project that's starting now. It's not being rolled out across the province yet. But my feeling is, why not? I mean, our kids are exposed younger than ever to images of sexuality on the internet. You know, like a recent study found, I think almost 3/4 of the images that they see have some sort of sexuality within them. And if we, the parents, aren't talking about it with them at home, it's not to say that we're not, but I don't see any.
And Kenny, do you think this is, you have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, just like myself?
Right.
You have a boy and a girl.
Right.
Do you think it's the same for your boy as your daughter?
I think one of the big wins is we have to make it the same. I think we should be talking about sex and bodies and what happens to your body and puberty the way we talk. I mean, my kids spend time building Iroquois villages and writing about different species of cockroaches and mountain lions. And I think we spend no time talking about what is going to happen to my body and what changes am I going through and why am I feeling these things. And the vocabulary isn't every day. And I think it needs to be. It needs to be just off the cuff. It needs to be a.
But do you think at one point something might be said in school to your daughter or to you? You had 3 boys, 14, 12, and 8, right?
You're good.
So you have 3 boys. What if they say something that you are not ready to discuss yet?
Well, better that it get prompted there than, you know, on the schoolyard or somewhere else like that, you know?
So they come up to you and they say, Mommy, talk to me about 8-year-old shows up. What are you going to say
well,
if you're not ready to go
Kenny
there?
and I were just talking about this beforehand, and we feel, and I think a lot of parents feel, well, I mean, I don't know how every parent feels, but I think those issues is better to face them head on. Don't give your kid euphemisms or stories to tell back in the schoolyard the next day. Tell the truth. Tell them what it is.
And that's the thing, Kenny, we were talking about telling you the truth. And listen, I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, and I've made the mistake of saying you're privates, you're this, and we were saying how important it is. We can't even say, we have a hard time saying penis and vagina. I said it, and
I
it's
sent
so
an email
hard.
to you saying, are we allowed to say penis and vagina
on the air?
It's horrible.
Yes.
Andrea and I were talking, everybody has seen Iron Man, but if there's a movie that has a breast in it, we discuss whether or not it's appropriate. They shouldn't see it because it has a breast in it. It is so backwards that I would hope you asked Andrea what should we do how should we feel if the kid comes home learning something that we haven't covered at home. I would hope ideally that would never happen.
Yeah.
I would hope ideally they'd come home and I wouldn't say, oh my goodness, because then I would ask myself.
But you have to understand, my 8-year-old comes up to me and he says, Mommy, this is Justin, and he says, Mommy, how did you get the, and he says, Mommy, how did you get the baby in your stomach? And so I say, well, you know, Daddy, and then I felt like he's too young, or is he, or am I at fault for not wanting to discuss exactly what those details are, but how did the baby get it, but how did it get in
I
there,
think
Mommy?
our big fear is that if we tell the kids about sex, they're going to run out and have sex. I think that is a lot of how parents think, is they find out about condoms, they're going to use the condoms. If they find out about intercourse, they're going to suddenly have intercourse.
And that's not necessarily the case.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because in the Netherlands, they've had this sex ed program for many, many years. It's called Spring Fever, and it's kindergarten right through, and they talk about all of these issues. And what they found is actually lower teenage sex, using condoms on the first try, lower incidences of sexually transmitted diseases.
Because so many teenagers don't even know where STDs come from and how you get STDs.
And they're too embarrassed to ask, they're too embarrassed to buy condoms, they don't understand the ramifications of pregnancy, they don't it can happen after one time.
And I would rather they know more than to come home and say, so Mom, my girlfriend's pregnant. So Mom, my girlfriend's pregnant.
You'd rather that? Really?
I would rather for them to know more than to come home, okay?
I'd rather that.
And so at the end of the day, we're saying parental control or government control. Do you feel that the government has the right to decide what is right for our kids?
Well, I think some people are going to have inevitably an issue with who's doing the teaching and how is the teaching being done. But, you know, I'm not teaching them linear algebra, and I have no problem with somebody else doing it. And what, you know, so they're going to be weaving it into other courses, and people think, oh, we were just talking, and you know, years ago how we learned it was the same way. It wasn't a specific necessarily. For years it's been done that way. And if we, the parents, are equipped to talk about it at home, how are teachers, even if they're getting a brief training course, truthfully, that's more than most of us get.
That's the big losers. They have no idea who's going to teach it, what the curriculum's going to be, and that's the big X. But I think we need to start.
At the end of the day, we still have a lot to learn. This is, again, a pilot project. So interesting to hear you guys' view on this. I cannot believe we're still talking about the sex thing and how, did you see how difficult it was for us to just say this?
Should we
I can't even say it. Anyway, stay tuned to more Breakfast Television.